We're back with the 7th episode of our video series focused on helping CPOs and their teams grapple with the critical issues we're facing in these challenging times. Our goal here is to pose a few ideas, perspectives, and questions that you should be asking as you navigate your way through this pandemic and its human and economic implications. So last week I began the discussion around the themes and issues that procurement executives need to begin thinking about as we emerge out of lockdown and start to ramp back up. Not quite at the new normal as yet, but certainly moving towards it. And so I focused that video on demand. How do we expect demand to change, where, and how? In today's video, I want to focus on the natural next step once you've understood potential demand changes, and that is what implications these demand changes will have on your supply chain. Now note that I'm really going to look at this from a procurement practitioner's standpoint, and I'm not going to get into manufacturing or distribution, though some of what I discuss will impact it. So what are the key questions you need to be asking right now in terms of supply chain changes? There are 5 in particular. First off, what are the post-crisis implications for my short and long-term supply chain strategy? What are the immediate issues that I need to begin to resolve and address? Where have my material supply disruptions been, and how will that evolve as markets around the world begin to open back up? Will these be sustained? Will they be short-term? And if so, do I need to be thinking about more broader, more material, structural changes? For example, my dependence on China specifically or Asia in general. We then need to follow up with a view of which alternative supply chain models will help us regain competitiveness or make us more resilient operationally. Going back to the Asia or China example, how do I adjust for that? Do I need to consider contract manufacturers as part of my medium to long-term strategy? Part and parcel of this, of course, is question number 3. How can I embed agility into my supply chain? Do I need to consider speed, responsiveness, mitigate for supply inconsistencies, and issues I faced over the last 2 months? What makes for a more agile model, especially considering a point I made in one of my earlier videos, and that is the need for scenario-based planning. Because remember, we can't simply plan for one single outcome because no one knows what's going to happen. So we need to consider and be ready for multiple alternative outcomes. The next question is, how do I improve visibility across my value chain, including tier 2 and 3 suppliers? One of the things that many of us have realized is that we don't have a structured risk program in place. And if we had one, perhaps it wasn't flexible enough. And the first port of call is getting a better, more practical view of supply chain health at multiple tiers, essentially by layer within your supply chain. Finally, we need to reconsider logistics optimization. How has that changed? What are the alternatives I have access to, and what's the impact from a total cost of ownership perspective? What does this imply for the targets I set in place from a sourcing and cost management point of view? And what do I need to do to optimize logistics? Of course, there are additional finer considerations, but those big picture questions are the ones you need to begin thinking about now and in the next 30 to 60 days. As always, if you have questions for us or would like to talk through how to best answer these questions, feel free to drop us a note and we're happy to get into a deeper conversation. All right, that's it for this video. Be sure to check out our special COVID-19 site, which has plenty of data and analysis and reports for you to access. You may be watching this video on the site itself, but if you're watching this on LinkedIn or YouTube, you can access it via the link above or below. Stay safe.